Yep. We're all in that. We're not
Welcome everyone to the September 19th meeting of the City Commission of Big Rapids. We'll start by calling the meeting to order and the roll call, please.
Akron?
Here.
Epley?
Here.
Gunther?
Here.
Johnson? Here. Simmons? Here.
If we could all rise and do the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The minutes from the September 6th meeting are not ready yet, so we're going to bypass that and go to special orders of the day. The first is the introduction of Laura Sermon, and there she is. Paula's going to talk.
Of course. Thank you, Mayor. So, Laura Sermon is the new employee in the Community Development Department. She's serving as the grant coordinator. It's her third week on the job, and we're very happy to have her.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody have questions for Laura? No. Hearing none, we'll go to the next introduction of Elizabeth Zelinsky. Gail's probably
here. Yep. Elizabeth Zelinsky joined us a week ago. It was her first day. She's the new appraiser for the City of Big Rapids. She comes to us certified and kind of ready to hit the ground. We've been working on training, and we're just thrilled to have her. So she started last week, and she came back this week.
Thank you, Gail. Thank you. Welcome.
Welcome.
Next, we're going to have a recognition of Gail for receiving a perfect score on the city's audit for assessors, and we have a special achievement award. It's presented to the City of Big Rapids and Cass County. I think it's presented to Gail because we don't do a whole lot of that work. On the 23rd of August, 2022 has been recognized for the outstanding achievement of receiving a perfect score on the 2022 audit of minimum assessing requirements, AMAR review. We wish to congratulate you and thank you for your continued efforts to provide fair and equitable assessing in the state of Michigan, and it's from the assessing people from the state of Michigan, but mainly Gail. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Perfect score.
Twice.
The next proclamation is to our friends at Ferris and the American Pharmacists Month. Are they the folks coming? There they are. Thank you very much for including us in your celebration this month. And City of Big Rapids would also like to celebrate American Pharmacists Month. Whereas pharmacy is one of the oldest health professions concerned with the health and well-being of all people, and whereas pharmacists are especially educated with a focus and level of expertise on medication therapy, are ideally suited to work collaboratively with other healthcare providers and patients to improve medication use and outcomes by providing services through medication therapy management, and whereas it is important to promote the profession of pharmacy as an essential healthcare provider, and whereas pharmacists provide both expertise and accessibility which are crucial to patients, fully optimizing access to medications that are not self-administered, such as, but not limited to, immunization. Now therefore, I, Mayor of the City of Big Rapids, on behalf of the City of Big Rapids and the American Pharmacists Association, do hereby proclaim October as American Pharmacists Month. I did not write that, you could tell. But I did my best. Thank you, pharmacists. Next, we'll start our study session, the first being the assessing audit And Gail's going to lead us through a presentation regarding what really that all is. Gail?
So every 5 years, the state of Michigan audits each assessing jurisdiction, which is why that was made out to the city of Big Rapids. And conversely, had I failed that audit, then the city of Big Rapids would be charged with responsibility of making sure that I could do a corrective action plan, that they would allocate funds if needed for that. So it's really on the jurisdiction. So I represent the jurisdiction. So it belongs to the city. And it's a series of questions that they ask. Some are simple paperwork things that you have to get in order and show them, that you have process for doing exemptions, process for poverty, making sure that you're only taking the appropriate things to the July and December board review. Because everything that we do in that office is driven by a statute. There's very, very little that we do independently without a statute. So our work is technical. It's all technical. There's a little bit of art to it, but it's very technical. And so they come in every 5 years. There's a checklist. You know about the checklist. So you should spend your 5 years in between making sure that you build on all the things in the checklist so that they're ready when they come to audit you. They want to look at our land values. They want to look at how we structure the neighborhood. They want to look at the modifiers that we put in there. They want to look at our statistical data to make sure that we're equitable, both horizontally and vertically. And so there's a lot of data that they look at. It's kind of dry, it's kind of boring, but it is the absolute basis to make sure that I'm doing all the things that I'm required statutorily to produce a roll every year. And so, like I say, they have the entire state of Michigan. They have a schedule of when you're audited. So you have 5 years notice that it's coming. You have a list, and you need to prepare for it. And we had a perfect audit in 17, and then this is our second perfect audit. And a lot of it's just following the instructions and providing them with the documents. But then there's some statistical things that I have to meet those benchmarks as well. And the city has done that, and so they send us a certificate. And I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. But if you don't, that's okay too.
Thank you, Gail, for the hard work.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The second study session will be postponed to a little later date because of illness. Number 8 is public comment, not related to things on the agenda. So, by the way, the pharmacy group, it's going to go on, and we would not be insulted if you found better things to do. It's just going to be government for the next hour. So, we would not consider that a bad thing.
Sorry. Like usually Kathy's here.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if somebody wanted to get there.
I believe Commissioner Johnson. I'd be more than happy.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Sorry to take over.
Johnson is ready to step into the photo.
I can be the official person to pass it up.
Boy.
Hey.
Woohoo.
I don't know how
You ready? Put your hand on Amanda. Oh, sorry. Okay.
looks like a fine.
All right, ready? You just send it to Kathy for a fine here. Oh, sorry.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Public comment, not related to other things on the agenda. Anyone? Hearing none, we'll move on to our general business. The first is a resolution accepting our proposals from police, and that'll be Heather talking about that. Heather?
Yeah. So the city applied for a grant specifically for the Hemlock Park splash pad and playground improvement. And we are in the process of working with them to identify if we are going to get the official award. And so what you have before you is a proposal, do pre-design, survey, design engineering, bidding, and then construction engineering. And Todd is here to answer any questions that you may have. But I want to point out on the resolution that this particular project is contingent upon the award, the grant award.
So Todd's not going to do the award till he finds out if we get the award.
Not really.
Officially, yes.
No.
The state requires this resolution. We'll have the grant.
In order for us to find out if we can.
And when will they make the official announcement on that grant if we make it?
Laura is she has a better handle on that.
Their plan is to have all of the awards in place by March of next year. So it could be sooner than that, but it shouldn't be any later than that.
And we're highly in contention for that grant.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Don? Anything you want to add?
You know, the official award that comes out in the March time frame, but what we can do is to get the proposal in front of you and contingent upon their approval, they will sometimes issue a letter that says go ahead and do the engineering so that we can stay ahead of the bidding cycle. So that might be the next step, is once we have the board's approval, we could approach CDBG and say we'd like to incur engineering costs, and we may be able to proceed a little sooner.
Because we wouldn't want to proceed with engineering in March and then go out to bid, would be a year behind our proposed cycle at least.
And it's, while they say, approval, what it comes down to, I believe, on the CDBG side is they have, it has to go through, not appropriations is the wrong word, but it has to get the official go-ahead from the feds, but they've already made the announcements that you're in line for this funding.
Any questions? Yes, please.
Could you clarify for us that don't know, I assume are you from the...
I'm Todd Richter with Bruce and Van.
And what money are we talking about? So that if you get so much, then you do so much? Grant?
Are you talking about the proposal? Specifically, the grant? The grant that we applied for is for over $1 million, so roughly around $1 million. And it would go towards the splash pad improvement as well as towards the upgrade.
So the question is, if we don't get the grant, then the money comes out of the city budget?
The engineering costs won't be incurred until we have approval of the funding agency. So we're not going to go forward until we have that approval.
And we are not supposed to say that we're finalists for this money. You're forbidden. So we're not saying we're finalists for the money. Is that right, Laura?
The other thing that I would add is that we did approve the budget for this splash pad already. So the project has been approved. We're just waiting on this grant funding. Yes or no?
The resolution is to satisfy one of the grant's requirements. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been motion and support. Commissioner Simmons?
So moved.
Commissioner Johnson, second. Further questions?
Packard?
Yes.
Epley?
Yes.
Gunther?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
The next, Heather, is a resolution to take out the aeration portion, and I'll let you explain that.
Yeah, sure. Just so everybody's fully aware, that we really putting in place all of our water quality parameters. This isn't an issue being brought up from Eagle or anything of that caliber. It's just staff has recently identified that we're having some issues with plumbing within our facilities, and we reached out to other facilities such as the Rapid High School, middle school, and it was identified that we all have it. So we looked at it a little bit closer and determined that the dissolved oxygen levels were high. And we had this issue in the past, back in the late 90s, when a similar thing happened at Paris University. And so we took the aeration machine and shut it off. The water still ran through it. And working with Lisa Vandenbrink, we did some testing and did some bypassing and realized that the dissolved oxygen levels are still high. And when we bypassed everything, they dropped down significantly. So what we have for you is to work with Lisa Vandenbrink to assist us with piping modifications and dual purpose. And again, Todd is here to answer any questions.
Todd, the reason we had the aeration system was because we were using river water, and we had to have the extra oxygen to pick up certain contaminants from river water. When we moved to the wells, we didn't need that anymore at all.
Yeah. And actually, the system's been turned off, I believe, since the in the late 90s. But what we're finding is it's still running through the process piping, and so it's getting agitated enough that it's still leading to some of the higher dissolved oxygen. This would bypass that completely and drop those lines.
Questions?
Values.
Thank you, Todd. Questions? Is there a motion for the resolution to engineer the aeration device? Support. There's a motion and support. Questions? Okay.
Heffley?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons? Yes. Packer?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Heather. The next is also under Heather's management, which is the DART system, and two different resolutions which relate to that transportation system dial-a-ride. The first is a resolution that we are up to date and most recent with the Disabilities Act. We have to do that every 3 years, and they audit us to make sure that we are right on top of it.
That is exactly what I'm going to say. Every 3 years, with gender protocol, we have to make sure that we have everything up to date and compliant with the ADA.
Questions? Hearing none, is there a resolution?
So moved.
Support. There's a motion support for a resolution adopting the updated ADA plan. Yeah.
Johnson?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Packman?
Yes.
Heffley?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes. Next is also related to dial-a-ride, the Controlled Substance Policy Program. Heather?
Yep, this is related to the MDOT Controlled Substance Alcohol Testing Program. So basically, anytime we have to do updates to anything that's related to transportation and federal funding, they like to see a resolution tied to it. And so what we've done is change from FS Solutions to a different vendor, which is Vault Health. And this is just updating that paperwork and then submitting it back to the
Questions? Hearing none, is there a resolution?
So moved.
Support. There's a motion support for the DOT Controlled Substance and Alcohol Testing Program. Kim?
Simmons?
Yes.
Packman?
Yes.
Heffley?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
So we're all finished with most business. Now we'll go to the work sessions, which is why many folks, I think, are here, which is the work session regarding the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance. Do we want to change locations and huddle up?
Yes.
All right.
Yes, we do.
All right. So if anybody's interested in that subject, this is where we're doing it.
So we'll be moving around the tables, folks, so let the commission get over there and everybody's invited to join us. We should maybe.
We can leave these here. I heard that. Here. So that rumor is true. For sure then.
Yeah.
Have this safe.
No.
I don't want to get locked in the
There you
We
go.
want to try to pull him.
Thank goodness.
Heather and I were going to.
Yeah.
Oh, just kind of.
Really all over the session.
We'll get to make sure everybody out here has got it.
That's what I was. We've got room for someone else right here. One more person. Eric? Yeah, we guys wanted.
We were trying to make sure that the people that were really coming to the meeting.
Yeah.
We never stopped, but we'll start. I'm going to turn the meeting over to Paula Creedy, who's our Director of Community Development, and let her lead us through the discussion.
All right, thank you, Mayor. So lots of people here, which is great. It's a work session, so I'm going to give some general overview of what's going on, where we're at in the process, and then it's hopefully going to be kind of a conversation. So there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work has gotten us to this point. The Planning Commission has been looking at these zoning elements for actual years, not hyperbole, literal years, in pieces, and bringing it all together. It's a lot of changes all at once because they're all interconnected. And I understand that that makes it kind of complicated. So hopefully tonight we can see some of the things apart and answer any questions from the Commission, from the public that are here. The Planning Commission at their last meeting in August walked through all of these things in detail and set the time to the public hearing to review these according to ordinance procedure, which will happen at their next meeting on this week, Wednesday. Since then, the Community Development Department has tried to get as much public comment as we can before it goes to the actual public hearing to make any changes based on that feedback. So there were a whole section of our website was put together outlining these pieces. We've created a video giving an overview, giving some of the background information, and we held 2 special public educational meetings to walk through the changes, to answer questions. We set up a bunch of boards and walked through as much in detail as we could with people who were interested. Based on those meetings, we've probably talked to about 50 residents from the community over the 2 meetings. It was in the newspaper, trying to get the word out. And then staff has made some changes from the last version that was at the public, or at the Planning Commission. So if you have the set of proposals that was in the packet for the meeting tonight, this is a direct copy and the staff report of what is going to be covered at the Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday. There are all of the changes to the current ordinance that were presented last month are marked in red. Additional changes are marked in blue. So there are several things that have been updated since the previous version, and to be honest, it makes sense to start there. So if you're looking at the staff report, this is on page 3. There are 5 things that have been added.
Where do you have those papers
based
at?
on.
No, I can pull it up on the screen.
Okay.
That one, so that makes sense.
You're talking about people, and we have no clue on who you're talking about.
I have a extra copy. The staff is like people, right?
Sure.
I can pull it over.
Can I just interject for just one moment, because that's the reason why I'm here.
I think that we need to, number one, thank you for everything that all of you are doing, okay? I know that we all love this community and we're doing our best. But I think that we need to revisit how we communicate with the citizens, okay?
We don't.
Because I just found out about this like 3 weeks ago.
So did I.
Okay. And I think that there's a whole pile of people in R1 that have no clue as to what's going on. I know my boss doesn't. And so I have a suggestion, because I don't like to criticize enough. I have a suggestion to offer for you folks. And I know some people think that no one looks at the water bill. They do, because they want to know, what it looks like. If you folks send information in the water bill, before, in front of the water bill, that says in big red letters, R1 proposed changes, that would solve a lot of issues that we have out in the community where people don't have a clue, okay? I was pretty shocked when the son came in to me and shared with me about this. These are pretty sweeping changes. And I had a meeting this morning with a few people, and since those changes were announced that they were going to be talked about, the changes have been changed again, which you guys don't know anything about yet. And so all I'm saying is that I think that for many reasons, not only in the R1 district, but just for community-wide, I think we need to have community conversation about a lot of different things in our community, and I think it's would be a good thing. And we haven't recovered yet from COVID, so we're all getting kind of back into the meeting, that visit together, and I think we need to learn how to communicate with each other. You do a very good job of doing the best that you can to reach people. And I'm on social media a lot. I don't think there's anybody in this city that doesn't know that I'm on social media a lot, but you still miss me. And I literally did not think it was possible for me to have missed this, but I did. And so I'm just saying I'm a little nervous about this, and I'm here. We'll talk about this right here, so we'll go on with it. But personally, I'm very nervous that this is going to the plan board, and I hope to hell that they don't vote on this, because I think we need to have some real conversation about what these changes are going to be. And I would like to be able to have some kind of say in it, and then instead of having, Wednesday, for them to vote on this. So I'm really hoping that does not happen. I think that this community has not been represented well in the communication way for this.
I would have to agree with Carly.
How do you answer?
I'm sorry?
How do you answer?
Dan Spadowski. Sad thing about this city, there's been a lot of junk going on around here that we haven't been talked about. It's sad. I talk to people now outside. Oh yeah, so you live in the drug city, huh? That's all you people do is put in drug houses. All you want to do is waste our money. You don't want to keep us informed. And how pathetic and sad is this? If you want to change this around, leave it alone. We've been through enough hell in this city. Every time we turn around, every 3 months, change the striping of the thing, put drug houses in, do that. Stop it. Stop it. For God's sakes, I've lived here 67 out of my 69 years, and I get people in here coming in on the board, and you want to do this kind of crap to me? I'm sad. I'm pathetic and sad to hear this, to see this. And the thing is, it's like you guys are rushing right through. Get it done, get it done, get it done. Who's benefiting from this? I'd like to know who's going to benefit from all this. The landlords? What's the percentage of the income housing needed and stuff and all that all this stuff is coming up on. And if you're gonna let some slumbos down in my area, you're gonna drop my taxes? I pay almost $5,000 a year in taxes to this city, and I get nothing more. I live down by the hospital where we got the waste management trucks coming through. We got all the ball teams coming through. We got all the people coming through, the hospitals, all that stuff. And yet you guys get $700,000, and what do you do with it? Well, we'll put it out on rails and trails. What the hell? Fix my road. Take care of your people. You guys are not taking care of your people, and the word is out there. I'm just telling you.
Well,
The only one I really kind of know about is the mayor. He's done some good stuff.
But can we give her the opportunity to show the new changes? Because they do reflect on the R1 based off the community feedback that she did receive.
Absolutely.
So moving forward with her position paper that she was referring to in the document, that's what I pulled up on here. And you have here the sections that she was going to discuss specifically. And Paula and I had the opportunity to discuss the R1 portion, knowing that that's one of the main topics that is highly concerned with many of the changes within the proposal. And as Paula stated, she has been working on this with the planning board and adjusting with some of their changes that they've had for years. Is government great at getting communications out to every single person? Not all the time. I mean, we acknowledge that, we try. And we're in the process of trying to get communications out more effectively by reaching out to other communities. It's a process. We're trying to figure out what the best way is to reach out to people. Now, just because it's going to the Planning Commission on Wednesday doesn't mean that they won't table it. I think that that's an opportunity for this group of people to come to the meeting and, you know, voice those same concerns that you have after you hear what proposed changes she's going to be making to the Planning Commission. Now, the blue and the red, I'm not sure if I can pull that up.
Heather, may I say something else? To just to address her and everyone here. I was on the Planning Commission, not for a number of years, but
So was I.
2 years before that. So what I will say is that we were discussing with Ben, a lot of our students here, we saw then, I don't think what was being done in a vacuum, it was actually religiously, so there's no perfect communication. I used to communicate a lot on Facebook, and I tried to, you know, I couldn't do as good of a job as John did, so it was. I think I got that. And then I just kind of fell off of social media, and so we've been talking with commissioners amongst ourselves, commissioners with the mayor, commissioners with the staff. How can we do a better job at communicating, not just with the citizens in Rapids, but with the community. So know that that's something that we've talked about. We're all actively, all trying to figure out the right way to do something, and just keep that in mind as we have these conversations.
The communication issue, Dan, is not a small one. Usually the partners are not here. We get maybe one article every 3 weeks in the Pioneer about that. That used to be when we found out what was going on in the government. That's useless now. And some of us folks don't do social media, Facebook or whatever it is. So there's a big problem with communication.
May I offer a suggestion? And it's because of, I do believe that it's been a while. We've all gone through COVID where we weren't communicating at all. And there's so many, it's almost like COVID is over and there's all these changes. And they're all good. I don't have a problem with changes. I just think that when you make changes, sometimes they last for a very long time. So we need to really reevaluate. And once upon a time, when I was city commissioner, what we would do when we found ourselves in a flux where all of a sudden, you know, there's all sorts of things happening, we had a community conversation where we literally had, well, actually at the time, we went up to the, Holiday Inn when, had the big room. And we said, let's do a planning thing where we envision what the city should look like. And just a community conversation where we could visit and talk and kind of clear out some of the maybe issues or anger or concerns. So we kind of grew trust a little bit, okay? And I'm thinking that maybe I would like to be able to have the city commission kind of revisit the possibility of doing that. Because there's an awful lot of things that are the city's growing. We have a new affairs president. We have some growth, maybe possibly. And the truth of the matter is, we haven't communicated really in a long time. Because of the situation that's been going on. I don't think it would be a really bad deal to just have an open session in a lot bigger room than this and ask different ones in different sections of the city to invite their neighbors. We can really pretty easily get about 200 to 300 people in a room where we all just sit in groups. We can even actually hire someone to come in and kind of just do envisioning here. But when you talk about some of the changes that I visited and looked at that were going to be changed for the R1 district, and then the switch, because today I visited with a couple of folks and we saw the new changes, they're still fraught with questions. And, I'm glad to know that, maybe we have a possibility of the plan board not to make a vote on this Wednesday. We don't really have a guarantee of that. It's up to them whether they want to table it or not. And that is a concern. And so I'm going to ask the city commission if you have a kind of a session, maybe it's a time for you guys to really go into a session where you actually just have a group meeting yourself and talk about what the future looks like before you have the session. But I think we really need to revisit that and look at it. It's time. And you know what? What's missing? Anytime we can figure out ways to communicate with one another, that's a good thing. I mean, I just appreciate the fact that you folks are willing to serve the way you were serving. I know a lot of times it's not easy, and you've got a lot of burden on those, shoulders of yours. And I'm not going to be the one that's going to point my finger at you folks and give you hell. I just want you to listen. And so, and really take what I have to say seriously, and let's see what happens in that. But the city is an awesome place, and I just want it to continue to be that way. And you have to be very careful in the future, especially when you have growth or you have a university president. I'm talking about we're going to be doing a lot more students here. He is dynamic, and I'm excited about that. But we have to plan for that as well. And I'm on the housing commission.
Arlene, I'm going to cut you off.
I understand that.
I would like Paula to explain a couple things. And even though I've been here about 10 months, I never quite understand why you change zoning policy and why it has to be reworked. It has something to do with the community redevelopment ready community thing, but why the specific things? And of course the R1 thing was just, I was deluged with people about the R1, and now it's changed a little bit, but there's still an allowed second unit on an R1 lot. I guess that's the part, Paula, that I have trouble with. The why, all that stuff.
I apologize. Sometimes it's hard for me to break dealing with reading people the back. So, apologies, I just step out. And
You want to start with the redevelopment ready community?
No, contrary to what my original plan was, the meeting has changed pretty dramatically from my original intent. So if it's okay with everyone, I would like to walk through my staff report in order. I believe it answers some of the questions and concerns that have been raised so far, and I apologize.
Ma'am, can we take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
That would be great.
Tammy, come back in second and see if there's any unscheduled. Finish up the
I'd like to,
we're gonna come back in order, and just do number 12 unscheduled business. Anything else for the commission while we're?
I have nothing, Mayor.
Anyone? The whole communications issue has been a problem for me since the beginning, that how we get our information out to the public is not done as well as it should be. And that's something we have to do. I don't have a quick, easy answer on that.
I do.
Sure.
The water bill. Everybody in the city gets a water bill.
I have to tell you the truth. It's been suggested by other commissioners to do it.
I suggested the plan board meeting in August before they did these information meetings, because I'm not on Facebook. As a Pioneer, I read. Even if it's in the Pioneer, I think a lot of people don't get the Pioneer. And at least by getting it in the water bill, I feel the city has done their job.
So, Tammy, we're going to start there with
You put it out here, and then
Paula?
they don't need it.
My apologies again.
We're more than willing to do it at another time.
No, we've got a lot of people who are interested here. I would like to go through it.
It's your call, Paula.
Would you prefer me, Mayor, to start immediately with the question of the R1 or to walk through some of how we got here?
Your choice.
I really would defer to you.
Go with the R1. That's why people are here. If you feel strong enough to attack it.
Okay. I would like to, after we address that and any concerns that arise from that, walk the commissioners through the process, that I want you to understand how we got to this point with having a proposed draft and a public hearing coming. To the question of the R1, based on the work that the Planning Commission has been doing, recommendations and requirements from the Redevelopment Ready Communities program that the city has been actively engaged with and working towards for the last 5 years, as well as findings of the housing study that the city received in 2020, and best practices and working with our expert planning consultant, Barb Smith Group. There were some proposed changes to many, not all, of the zoning districts. The majority of the changes, in my opinion, are to other districts, but lots of concerns are about a proposed change to the R1, which would redefine what a house is to be potential to be up to 3 units. So a detached standalone structure that could be up to 3 units. This works very well in many communities. It is purpose-built to be multiple units. It fits in with the character of the neighborhood. And the Planning Commission and staff knew that this would be the most controversial part, and that's why we brought lots of attention to it at all of the public meetings we did, at the Planning Commission meetings, at the educational sessions, it's called out specifically on the website page, etc. We wanted to get feedback on this point. We got a lot of feedback on this point because it is the most controversial. And based on all of the feedback that was received for the R1, this is section 3.5. If you're looking through the draft ordinance, if you have an older version, it doesn't have the blue markings in it. I apologize. They're called out in different colors to highlight what few additional changes have been made since the initial draft. These are changes being recommended by staff based on feedback. We address the concern and change it for that district, the RP and the R1, those 2 districts, I apologize. A house comprised of 1 unit and a maximum of 1 accessory dwelling unit. So that would reduce that 1 building to be up to 3 units to just 1. Still, the recommendation is there of allowing up to 1 accessory dwelling unit. That is a smaller secondary unit. Think of a mother-in-law suite, a cottage apartment, a garage, second story on a garage apartment. There's not a lot of feedback was received on that, so that one is still being recommended to move forward. And that addresses most of the comments and concerns that we received were about the R1 and concerns about how that district in particular would be changed. There are 2 other small changes to the, 2 other changes to the RR, or to the R1, I apologize. Addressing the lot area minimum, reducing that to 7,500 square feet from, I believe it was 11,250 before. That very large lot requirement makes many of the current R1 lots require up to 7 exceptions that are currently found in Article 4 of the zoning ordinance, because you have to reduce the setbacks and the front setback and the sides and the lot size, because that created nonconformity, because most of our lots in the city of Big Rapids are originally platted. They are smaller lots. Reducing it to this number would eliminate just right away a lot of those nonconformities by making the district, and this is changed in all 3 of the primary residential districts, to fit the lots that we actually have in Big Rapids. The other change is to add a front yard maximum, so you can't build way in the back of the lot. You have to build in the middle or the front up to the street. And so, in response to the feedback that we heard, concerns about the R1 being changed, that essentially has been taken out. There's still the proposed changes add in the accessory dwelling unit.
Cole, why would R1 folks want other R1s to add a cottage or a little something on their properties? What's the basis behind it? To add more housing? What's the reasoning?
Behind accessory dwelling unit?
Yeah. Why
2 rental units.
Well, that's what
From a real estate agency point, 2 rental units is what I want.
Is that what it is, Paul? Or why do you think why do you want to put an extra dwelling on an R1?
People do it for a variety of commissioners, please.
I know, as someone who has a parent that lives with them, I've often thought about having some sort of dwelling, not for rental at all, but to house a family member who can no longer live by themselves, but still want that independence. So when you talk about accessory dwelling units, that's certainly one reason for having them. I believe if you go back into the redevelopment ready community, and particularly if you look at our housing study report, which was done in 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, I don't remember what year, but they talk about just what I said, among several other reasons that you might want an accessory dwelling unit. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
But the concern is obvious that, exactly what Mr. Denny said, you put an extra one on there so you can rent it out and then pay your mortgage.
Lots of people do that. They're expensive to build, so there is a hurdle to having an accessory dwelling unit, because it is a small standalone unit. Sometimes it's attached to the primary residence, sometimes it's not, but it has everything it needs to be a self-contained. It has to have kitchen facilities, bathroom facilities, etc. It's not just a dorm room and then someone uses the main house. It is a standalone unit.
And could they rent it out?
They theoretically, yes, they could. Like any house in the R1 can be rented today to one person or a family. It's not proposing to change the occupancy for any of the districts. So you could. For example, if I were to build one on mine, I have a 3-bedroom home. If I were to, I could propose to downsize, live in a small unit and rent the big one to a family, or vice versa.
Or could you sell that and have rent to 2 different families? And say you decide, I'm going to go in an apartment, I'm older, then there's 2 houses there. Could you rent both of the houses?
To one person or a family?
To 2 different families?
Oh, sorry, to one person or a family. The answer to the question is they couldn't be rented to like there's those students, but hypothetically, yes, there's been proposed to me in some of the conversations at the meetings of what if those are only allowed if the property was owner occupied. It's
That's where I'm going.
difficult to regulate because then it's not someone who owns it lives on it. It would hypothetically address concerns from some people that properties would become run down if they're rented. But you could do that initially. It's tough to do once the house sells. So if it was owner occupied, you could build one, and then it's a regulatory hurdle that we have not yet found a way to overcome. Because the concern was owner occupancy.
So it's also a regulatory concern that we haven't been able to address. Is this full rental? What is rental meaning? Is it rapid? And we can't really, from my understanding, say you can rent or you can't rent to somebody. We don't have that in our ordinance. It's not really something that's done in ordinances.
You could rent both those units.
I'm just coming at it from a global perspective.
Yeah.
Let's just take a step back in terms of rental properties here. I'm going to think about it the way the zoning is set. I don't specifically call out my understanding of each family for each business. It's not the way the ordinances are written. And my understanding is that could be an issue with regards to being discriminatory, the way it's been put out. So what I'm hearing is that we have an issue with rental properties. But what I'm saying is I don't think that this mechanism is what fits that overarching concern about rental properties.
You probably shouldn't put home up anybody you want to, but if there's a second home there, you could be then renting out 2 homes on your property. And that's what we're trying to, that's what I think the citizens are not talking about. Do you have a comment, Dan?
I have a quick question for Paula. You said you did some studies with some communities. What communities?
I'm sorry, could you elaborate
What communities have you done studies with? You said you said you had checked in or checked with other communities to see how this was working.
You had
When you were doing the report, you said you did some communities. What communities have you done this with? I'm concerned.
I don't recall exactly what you say I said, so I'm not sure how to answer the question.
The remark was that this has worked well in other communities. Thank you. Do you know what communities we're talking about?
Accessory dwelling units are allowed in much of the country.
But did you specifically go and talk to somebody in the community? Because what I'm trying to find out, do you have it in front of you saying, well, yeah, this worked for 99% of the people? That's what I'm trying to find out. Is what communities have you checked with that's going to tell me that maybe I'd like to go check with them and see if it's, if it's really working for them?
Okay, I understand the question. Thank you for the clarification. During this process, I have not traveled around Michigan and spoken to people who've done each of the different pieces based on the results of the housing study, best practices from the planning and zoning profession, peer written and published articles in scholarly journals, etc. I did not do what you are describing, where I traveled across Michigan and spoke to individuals about their experience with.
Because you had commented that you had checked with communities. I heard you say. My other quick question is, have you guys all thought about the 3 to 5 to 10 years down the road? What is this going to do in those zones? Have you thought about it? Just want to know. Or are you thinking, hey, let's get it done right now? I'd like to know what you think. How is this gonna work, affect, and is this gonna do something better for my community, or is it gonna make it worse? Have you done the study?
Mayor, who here has Facebook? Who here is on Ask Big Rapids? Okay, so it's a community group about Big Rapids. Lots of gossip happened. It was originally intended as a platform where you could ask questions if you're new to a community or you need a handyman or any questions about Big Rapids. Over the past 2 years, it has been heartbreaking to see the number of people who are either incapable or unwilling to buy a house, who are now being unhoused because they're being priced out of rental properties. And that's because there are not enough properties for people to live in our community. The more housing we can bring into our community, the more ways we can find for our families to have these units, the less that will happen. And I think that is the ultimate goal of this.
More housing.
Is more housing. So my understanding of this is that this is a living document. This is a working document. We love that you are here. I love that you are here. I can't speak for anybody else. I don't have that authority. I love that you're here because I love the perspective you guys are giving me on this. I live in a part of town that has a lot of college rentals and a lot of people who live here as long as we have. People who have retired from the local bank or who used to run a golf course or are teachers. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of things what you have, being a homeowner in this community. I live next to a housing situation where it was a carriage house or a shed, or not a shed, but like a garage, that was turned into an individual studio rental unit. And of all of my neighbors, that is the one neighbor I've had the least complaints out of over the past 7 years. But it gets rented separate from the house that's in front of it. And I understand that concern. I think my speaking up on this was to speak to your concern of, have you talked to anybody personally who lives next to a situation like this? I personally live next to a situation.
No, I want you to talk to all the people in this community. I want you to ask them what they feel. I would like you to really see you do that. And I don't want to hear you say this is human. I live in a home. It's my house. Thank you. I will do change that. I'm good.
You want to change my words?
Don't be saying unit. Don't call my house a unit.
Oh, I'm not calling your house.
You said there'll be
units. It's a rental
units.
unit. It is one family, one person in that unit.
I think the goal isn't the goal of in missing middle housing, etc. Is to find ways to have more housing. I mean, isn't that the goal of the whole thing?
This is absolutely one of the primary goals, is to provide housing of the Redevelopment Community Program, and arguably the most key finding of the housing study is that we need more units that are different from the units that we have now. We have a lot of single-family homes in Big Rapids, one-unit standalone houses. We have a lot of apartments in large apartment buildings. We have very little of all of the many housing types in between. And that's what a lot of people are looking for today, and not just college students. If you look through the housing study, I'd be happy to get you a copy. It's available on our website. families and retirees and single parents and young professionals are looking for options that are not just a standalone house or a large apartment complex. And so one of the goals of the Redevelopment Communities Program and one of the goals of these zoning, proposed zoning changes is to permit more of these other types of housing. The city doesn't build these. This would allow them to be built if they meet the requirements and they get the correct permits and they have enough space and they have enough parking. If it's a rental, enroll in the rental program. None of this would allow anyone to bypass all of the other systems in place, which we all know work pretty well, but not always perfectly. I understand that. But they would permit, if the developer wanted to, in the RR district, for example, to build 4 units instead of 2, because that if it fits the space and they have enough parking and they can build it, that would allow a lot more of those properties to be developed, because based on housing costs today, construction costs, etc., it's prohibitive for small developers to build 2 units. They need to build 3 or 4 to make the money work. To see some of this redevelopment happen in our community. The city is actively working on adding more standalone single unit homes in, for example, the Mechanic Street development or the small development on West Avenue. But that's one piece of a much more complicated puzzle to address the housing concerns. This is yet just one more piece of allowing more infill development and more development of different sizes to help meet the various needs of people in the community, or people who want to move to Big Rapids but can't find what they're looking for in a value-based community. Attainable housing. Some people, have smaller budgets, looking for smaller units. Some people don't want to have to maintain their own yard. They'd love to have a small unit where someone else takes care of that, or people want to rent. There's a large variety of people in our community and people who would want to move to our community according to the findings of the housing study. That's why we did that. We hired someone so that we're not just basing big policy decisions on the anecdotes, the lives we've lived and the stories we've heard from people in the community. Those are valuable, but we also need some of these hard facts. And so we're trying to bring both of those together. It's pretty clear from a lot of the feedback that was received that we staff in the planning commission, in my words, not theirs, leaned a little heavy on the findings of the housing study and the proposal that was put out. We've heard feedback from the community. We've addressed the B primary change, hoping to ameliorate some of those concerns and address that while still allowing, where it makes sense, where people want to and can afford to build, some increased density in the community. To Commissioner Johnson's point, people are looking for housing in our community, and this is one piece of that. I'm sorry, I'll get off there.
Yeah, one second. I'm going to just say that the biggest concern among the folks that speak to me about this issue are the R1 folks who don't want to see additional places placed on their land. And one of the worst things we could do to the city of Big Rapids is to alienate all our R1 folks, because they pay a lot of taxes and do a lot of great things and so that's I think why it became such an issue, and that's why I think the folks are here. So and they tend to be the leaders of the town, and I think we have to be careful to respect their rights of ownership.
To your point, we also can't forget to speak for those who are disenfranchised, don't know how to reach out and connect because they have nobody in their family teaching them, and are unable to live in our community, but they're forced to. They have no other alternative.
That's the opposite of what I said, and it's true. Both are true.
We don't represent just the people who pay the highest taxes in the city.
No, but we do represent them too, Amanda.
We do. 7 years ago, 7 to 8 years ago, I was in a situation where I was trying to decide if I was going to leave this community or what I was going to do because of a housing situation. Thankfully, I aligned myself in a position where I had resources available. I'm stubborn, and I got the job done, and I ended up being able to buy a house as a single mom of 2 kids.
Somebody else want to
But
comment?
not
We're gonna wrap
everybody
this
is
up
able to
pretty
do
soon
that.
because I think my plan is a little different than what.
I have a quick question. I was on the Economic Development Board for Nuevo County for many years. One of the things that Nuevo County found is they were also having a problem with their housing. They contracted and worked with Sable to build small houses on an area which is many sizes. They also worked with banks in the area, community banks that were helping to give low interest rates to those people. That solves the problem for economic rather than taking our existing houses, and it gave them pride because they had a brand new house. They aren't living in the basement or an attached house. This is prideful for them. They had their own place. So has anything been looked at?
We're working on that. We have the 100 lots that we have going to Jorgensen. That part I think we have done.
Yeah.
We don't have the, we don't have the things that Paul was talking about.
This is just another thing that we haven't addressed yet. Actually, and like, and one thing to that point is that type of development is currently prohibited under our existing ordinance, but would be allowed under the proposed changes. So it allows more of those flexible things.
So, with the response you've gotten from the community, have you heard anything from the R2, R3 people?
A few comments, not as many. The changes there, while also I would argue more significant. They're being received well. I've heard a surprising number of comments from people who live in the R1 district saying, I don't want this here, but it's okay over there. And I find that rather sad, because we are one big rapid. It's not an us versus them and R1 versus everybody else. And most of the comments I'm hearing that are, that were negative is the wrong word, that had concerns about the proposed changes and the impact they would have were from people who live in the R1. And we, staff are doing our best to address those changes. I know the planning commission is as well.
Okay, with that said, I live in R1 because I rezoned it to R1 back in around 1990, from R2 to R1. And I did it for a reason, because we had so many rentals in the neighborhood, and our neighborhood looked terrible. I gave the mayor a tour of it. We're between State Street and Sheridan, and the charter school and the fairgrounds. So, and then there's the whole neighborhood down by the pool area that was also rezoned from R2 to R1, which I understand was a citywide vote. So I guess my thought is the people that bought in R1 bought into R1 for a reason. With that said, what would be the big deal about letting R1 stay R1 and doing whatever you want if the people in R2 and R3 are okay with it? I mean, I don't sound like a bad guy, but I think that's a bad idea. I don't know.
Well, you got a brand new neighborhood going in. Put in 300 lots. Instead of 100. Small lots. That's good enough. But I rezoned R1 for a reason. I do not want extra houses in my neighborhood on small lots.
I understand the comments that were made. I appreciate them. I've heard the more we've spoken about this. I just do want to address one other thing that I've heard from several people is that all of the R1 feel this way, and that's really just frankly not true. I've spoken with several people who are in the R1 and are supportive of the proposed changes, especially the accessory dwelling units, that see the value in the diversity of housing that can be provided, who say, I have a family member that I would love to move next to me. I'd love to stay in my house, but be able to provide them some independence. So there's not one universal negative feeling across the community.
Oh, she has pictures.
I have Rosemary waving her hand at me, and there she is.
Well, I don't know what I want to say, but I think we need to be respectful of the people that are in the R1, R2, R3, R4. I can communicate with you. I'm in a mobile home park, okay? Not many people would choose to live there, but we're people. R1 is people. We can live together in this town if they choose to. I think sometimes we forget to recognize or support our longtime residents that have built this town.
Pardon?
I just want to know, Paula, do we have any pictures that we can see of different places so we can kind of visualize? I am not a very good visual person, so whenever we have talked about things, I actually have to get out of my car and walk on the property and go all that extra vision. Do you have any pictures? I mean, I'm thinking about it in the R1 that I live in, and I'm thinking about the houses that could actually put in other houses on the outside. One in particular could probably put another house in there. And so I'm trying to visualize what that's going to look like when I'm walking on my way to work and everything. Can you provide me maybe later on with some pictures so I can kind of visualize what that might look like in some of the other cities?
Absolutely.
Because I know we need housing.
A lot of this has been covered through the housing study stuff on the city website that we put together for this topic. There are resources that show images of different types in several of the presentations, as well as in the housing study materials also on the website. I'm happy if you email me, Carmen, I can get to them directly. The Planning Commission looked at a bunch of these when they were considering, do we want to, in some districts, permit flats, which are small apartment buildings? Do we want to permit townhomes? Do we want to permit accessory dwelling units? They considered all of these things, and so yes, we have those available that I can get you. Not with me tonight, I apologize, but yes.
Are they on the website?
Yes, I am.
I'll just put it on the website and look at it then. If that's there.
I would like to hear from commissioners as to whether we could give this a little more time to cook through and have some meetings, some more meetings to educate and do whatever.
I am sorry to interrupt, Mayor. If I can I speak to where we're at in this process before Commissioners answer that question to give you some frame of reference? So as I said at the beginning, this has been working through the Planning Commission since, as I like to say, the time Commissioner Cochran was a Planning Commissioner. So it's been a long time that these pieces have been in motion. We've compiled everything. According to the public hearing notices that went out, the public hearing will happen at the Planning Commission, the regular Planning Commission meeting this Wednesday at 6:30 right here in this room. Everyone is welcome to attend. You can also send me comments. I've been getting them. They will all be presented to the Commission as well. At that time, they will be reviewing everything, the proposed changes, the staff recommendations, changing those. They can either recommend the changes to the City Commission for adoption. They can also table at that time and solicit further feedback. All of this is currently at the Planning Commission's purview. This meeting tonight was to hopefully loop in the City Commissioners and make sure you're aware of all of the moving pieces, trying to answer questions about all of the different pieces, or just the R1, depending on how the conversation goes. And then it would come back, if they made a recommendation this week, it would come back at the second October meeting to the City Commission. So that's any vote on this is at earliest a full month away, but they could table it. They could also make a recommendation, and when it comes to you, you could table it. So there is some flux involved there, and that's kind of where we're at in the process. Hopefully that provides some context for the commissioners to respond.
What is happening now is that it's just now coming to the public's knowledge and hitting the fan. And isn't that you've been doing it for 5 years, and we all knew for 5 years, people are just realizing, oh, this is something real, and now we got to pay attention. And that's why.
And COVID for 3 years, nothing was
going on. So now that people are making their comments, commissioners, what do you?
Can we do a roundtable meeting?
Who?
Do we have to do that?
I am. There you are.
All right, thank you. So I, for one, would like to see study session where we're able to listen to all of staff report and go through what we were supposed to do today, to go through section by section of the document. I would like to do that. I will thank city staff for preparing all staff presentations, for getting us to this point, understanding that it has been a lot of work for them to prepare this and present to us, as well as what happens when you work for a city entity. This isn't the city trying to go out and make changes. This isn't one individual. This is a result of several years of study, and definitely something
that you need to keep working on. It's been brought to a point where I think it's very close to being something that we can all kind of know about. The other thing I will say is just a reminder, the Planning Commission has done a lot of work on this. I want to respect the work the Planning Commission has done, and I want to allow for the next step to proceed the way it has been.
Thank you. Mr. Cochran?
A couple things. First of all, I just want to make sure that we do acknowledge that Paula and her team have been working assiduously and nonstop for years on this project. And I just want to make this statement that, you know, I was on the hiring committee that hired Paula. And one of the reasons that we hired Paula was because of her expertise in this field. She has earned her credentials. She has tremendous command of her craft. And most importantly, she was hugely excited about coming to work here at Big Rapids. I think we interviewed 9 candidates in that search. Variety of different backgrounds and perspectives. Paula was the first one, and she stood out so tremendously that it was hard for me to look at the other 8 points. But all of that to say this. One of the reasons that we hired Paula for her credentials was to guide us in this very difficult path of growth and change. And I think as I'm listening to people, and I do very much appreciate the perspective of the public who has come here, what's occurring to me is that we have big gaps in our communication methods. I'm a context person. I am a big picture person. And I look at this within the context of the city's strategic plan and the issue of housing and the issues that Commissioner Johnson has said that we were hearing from myriad sources. We need affordable housing. We need housing for young professionals, et cetera. The Redevelopment Ready Community Initiative, which I don't think anyone is truly well versed enough in, and this is kind of really critical. We did not do our job well in terms of getting out with that meeting, and we're throwing around all this alphabet soup because that's what we kind of end up doing all the time. But the purpose for the RRC, of course, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is because we are bounded, with all due respect to Township Supervisor from Big Rapids Township, we are bounded. We don't have any place to go outward. So we need to look inward at how we can repurpose and redevelop properties within the city to maximum effect. Add to that, of course, that according to the census, rightly or wrongly, we lost 2,800 people over the last decade, which took a big chunk out of our revenue sharing. And whether or not that was fair schemes or not, we don't know, but we still lost the money, so that's kind of the bottom line reality of that. All of that to say that communication is key, it is important. I very much appreciate that. You know, I would love to work with my colleagues here and whomever else is interested to figure out a system for soliciting community input on a regular basis in acceptable ways, because we do have a valuable perspective to share. I also wanted to state for the record that I know I have been hearing a lot of stuff swirling around in the community, some of which has gotten very personal and a personal animus towards the staff here. And so while we are talking about respecting each other, I really want to encourage us to be respectful of the people with whom we disagree, focus on the content, let's not make it personal, let's not start attacking people for whatever their reasons, because that is the best way I know for communications to break down.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Commissioner Johnson.
Most of your commissioners before me, I would definitely like a true work session where we can go through all of this together and
fully comprehend every little detail and have the opportunity to ask questions that are pertinent. And thank you for the work you've put into this. Just because it's not where it needs to be to be satisfactory to everybody doesn't mean that we're not doing an amazing job trying to make it work. So I appreciate that.
I also would like to thank Paula and Anthony for their hard work as well as the planning commission for using their initiatives to this point. Thank you so very much. It is clear to me that there are still folks in the community who still have concerns. So it would be easy to jump from that point to that there are others who have not been able to speak up about any reason that they could speak up. So I would be open to hosting more input sessions where we can vote for that. Let's get out to those who have concerns. But on the flip side of that, I agree with the changes that are proposed so far, and that's a good point. I will vote that forward.
I think that there should be no reason to rush. If the community, our folks are concerned, we need to study it further, know the ins and outs, and act in a reasonable time. Not that it's hurrying, because that's the way that we do it. When you schedule a public hearing, you got to do it. I got that. And if that can happen next Wednesday, no problem. But to think we have to rush to get this through, till all the citizens have their say in it, isn't a good idea. And I think communication has been a problem from day one, and how to get the word out to the people on the street. It's very hard right now. And if you don't Facebook, that's just not a thing a lot of us do. So we have to come up with a way to communicate all these things to the public, and communication is a lot of
there's one other step to the process that really hasn't come out. The way this is legally arranged and politically arranged is that the Planning Commission takes the first run at it. And the Planning Commission is the workhorse for putting the material together and the recommendations to the City Commission and to conduct at least the first round of public hearings. When it comes to the City Commission with a recommendation, whatever that might be, the City Commission has the authority to schedule its own or another public hearing or a series of public hearings before the City Commission. So it's not often talked about because it's not often thought to be necessary. But if this is a series of proposals that makes people so anxious that they want to make sure they're heard, it's certainly available to the City Commission when it gets there with a recommendation from the Planning Commission to schedule another round of public hearings or another public hearing. You're not obligated to act immediately without further reflection or study or hearing, just as you mentioned. So that's all that's still available to you. It hasn't been given up at all.
I think I'm going to call.
Can I have one more thing? Paula, excuse me. If the plan board meeting on Wednesday, I was at the plan board meeting in August, and the presentation was very thorough. You had all the pictures, that Charlie was asking about and all that. Is that what you were going to do tonight, or what are you going to do on Wednesday? Will it be that much information? You know what I'm saying? What I'm thinking is the city commissioners could attend the plan board meeting on Wednesday, which would give you more of an opportunity to listen to what she's going to get to tonight. I don't know. Is that a thought?
I appreciate the suggestion. The intent for Wednesday was a little different because the Planning Commission has already gone through everything in great detail. We were going to go through it at a high level, focus in on the feedback that has been received and the proposed changes based on what they had already seen. That could be changed. That is just a staff recommendation. So it sounds to me like the City Commission wants that super high level. We're they're kind of in control to ask questions, so we can absolutely schedule that. Before you call the meeting, Mayor, can I ask a question of the commissioners? One of my hopes for tonight was to get feedback from the commission, like I've been gathering public feedback to bring to the planning commission for their meeting on Wednesday. From everything I've heard, it sounds like the R1 is still the largest sticking point and the major concern of the city commissioners. I understand we didn't get into everything in great detail. Are there any other pieces that are of major concern at this point outside of the change to the R1? There's a lot of different pieces that were involved, and we kind of only talked about one, and if possible, I'd like to know what else. But again, maybe that's not a useful question to do.
I think there's going to be a lot of time to do that. We're going to, this won't be the last meeting, and we can all, follow with our individual concerns, and then I'm sure after the planning commission meeting, this commission will set up a schedule in our minds that will work for us to evaluate, and I'm sure you'll be there. I hope.
Which is said though, with the document the way it is tonight, is what the planning commission will be voting on. Is that correct?
The planning commission will, the way it runs when it's less controversial, I guess, is that the planning commission holds a public hearing and makes a recommendation to the city commission. They do not, as a board, adopt changes to the zoning ordinance. The recommendation would come to this board, and they would vote at a later time.
And where does it stand? Because there was some discussion at the last meeting about manufactured homes. Is that in this document? Was that agreed upon by the commission after that meeting to do anything with that at this point? Because that was going to go for discussion.
That point was set aside for greater, because it kind of stands apart from this. It needed more scrutiny, so they had hoped to, after these set of changes went through, bring that back up with a much larger magnifying glass to zero in on that concern in detail.
I'd like to thank the citizens for coming. Thank you all. And we'll try to get some good action on this.
Thank you.
I pushed that out.
I don't think there's any place